On the contrary, too, you could be eating really well and doing all these great things, but then if your environment sucks, I think it's so interconnected in terms of the mind and the body. Like, I agree, mental health is so much physical health, and physical health is mental health. However, I feel like, we don't appreciate happiness or joy if we don't live in those difficult feelings. Like, you have to sit through your shit. Like, you have to feel your shit and sit through your shit. I
think feeling it might go a little further, but that's fine. We can
Okay, whatever.
How do you think social media has affected the expectations of women? We live in an attention society. And nowadays, a lot of women can get attention for what they post on social media, right? Mm-hmm. But there comes a point where, like, you can't do that anymore. Well, you're getting attention for wearing less clothes. Mm-hmm. Is there, like, self-value coming from that? All right, guys, welcome to Becoming a Better You podcast. Today, a special guest is Lauren Shant.
Yep.
Who is a board-certified functional nutritionist and was a mental health therapist?
As a mental health therapist.
As a mental health therapist. Okay, so I'm in the medical field, so that's even a lot for me. So can you kind of give me maybe your background and then what that actually means?
Yeah, sure. So I started off as a mental health therapist. So I was working more in the conventional realm of medicine. So kind of more with psychiatrists, more med prescribing, just kind of psychotherapy, with children, adolescents, and adults. However, I felt like there was something missing for me. I'm someone that really embodies more of a holistic, approach. So looking at like nutrition, lifestyle factors, even environment.
Now, were you doing that on your own because you saw that stuff wasn't working?
And so I kind of took a little break to see like what I wanted to do moving forward. So kind of checked in with like my internal values, because it wasn't sitting well with me that like a lot of these adolescents and children were given like these pretty heavy diagnoses and different cocktails of medication and not really seeing much relief or progress in spite of a lot of great therapy, and obviously the psychiatrists doing the best they could to, help these children, adults, and adolescents. However, I felt like something was missing.
And so when we talk about like diagnosis, right, especially in kids, I think it labels them with something that probably going to take with them for the rest of their life.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I understand where humans would like to categorize stuff, but can you talk to me about like when we label somebody with a diagnosis, I believe it limits them and their potential throughout their whole life.
Oh my gosh, I 100% agree.
Right?
Yes.
And we haven't talked about this before because we've only talked briefly.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like I get it. You need to label them for insurance purposes and for like what medications you're going to give them. But now you're limiting their potential.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you talk to me kind of about what you kind of saw with that?
Yeah. For 100%. I do think it can kind of do more damage than it does good. Like I 100% understand like insurance purposes, the DSM, it's there for a reason. We're trying to classify symptoms and like kind of make sense of these symptoms and the symptoms that, the child or adolescent adult are presenting with. However, I do think it can cause more harm than good because then they're like, oh, I'm like, I'm damaged or whatever. And instead of being like, oh, okay, these are maybe my adverse childhood experiences. These are perhaps my genetic makeup, etc. Like, what can I do in terms of my environment, in terms of my lifestyle, perhaps my connections with others, or how can I support myself and have others support me, rather than just looking at, oh my gosh, I have this diagnosis, I have to take this medication, and the rest of my life just looks like this.
Yeah, I think you're pigeonholed.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And so when we talk about, like even from my standpoint as a physical therapist, so when you're diagnosed with like disc herniation, right? A lot of people become kinesiophobic, which means they don't want to move. Yeah. Right? They're like, I can't lift that 10-pound fruit basket or whatever. Like they really limit themselves. And as a therapist, I need to be like, no, Lauren, like you're good.
Yeah.
Right? You have no radiating pain.
Yeah.
Your disc herniation was 5 years ago. You're obviously moving through life like you need to. You're functional. Like we can progress this. But people just take that with them, or if you even get like a more serious diagnosis, like you know, complex regional pain syndrome, which one of my clients has, right? Mm-hmm. Well, when I started, and so what that is basically like, that's probably one of the worst disorders you can get, because it's usually your nerve is crushed and your brain doesn't realize that it's not still being crushed. Mm-hmm. So like any kind of touch to it can like send you into like a frenzy, and it's real.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what happens is then we need to try to desensitize that, but it's so extreme that you're on guard all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so when I started working with him actually through the martial arts, it was really giving him the confidence back. Right. Mm-hmm. And you would see it after years of working with me. Now, the medical model doesn't give you years to work with people. Mm-mm. Right. No. But after years of working with me, he's playing guitar, right? He can actually touch things with that hand. Does it still have pain? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we had to take him out of that mind frame of, I have this diagnosis and this is my limit, to like, well, I do have that diagnosis, but I'm not limited.
Yes. Right. I love that. Yes. Yeah. So like informing and empowering.
Yes.
Yes. And like kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe I do have, you know, this category of symptoms, or these symptoms are presenting. However, maybe let's look at why. Let's look at other factors involved, and let's look at ways that I can actually support myself, and, you know, people in my environment can support me, or even looking at nutrition and lifestyle, which I'm a big component of.
Do you think that because of the labeling, because people didn't get better, that's what's made you seek out other alternatives to help others?
I think actually even in school for my psychotherapy program, for my master's program, I don't know, even taking some of the courses, I felt like something was missing for me. I remember for a paper, I wrote about like a holistic approach to therapy. So I think that was something that always was like something in me, like, you know, like eating healthy, like moving my body, like just dealing, going out in nature, like all of those things helped me. And I felt like, you know, as a therapist, starting off as a young therapist, I think I was like 23 at that time, like, oh, I want to like, you know, change all of this. And it's like, wait, okay, just with meds and psychotherapy, yeah, we're doing something, but I didn't feel like we were getting any better. I think we were just like managing, and I didn't really think it was the best standard of care, looking at like the whole picture, the whole person, and actually what would work. So
almost like a Band-Aid.
Yes. Yeah. So I think like kind of, yeah. And I also do think, you know, as a young therapist, you're not always taking care of yourself either, because it's like burnout, especially your first job. So I think like a lot of the things that used to help me, like going to the gym or going for a run or even going outside, like I was like always in like this, you know, kind of fight or flight mode. So I kind of felt like for myself too, as a practitioner, like, wow, this model isn't working for various reasons. So.
And not for the practitioners either, like you.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge point, because a lot of times, I think healthcare workers, you go into healthcare because you want to help people.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, I don't think anyone really does it for the money.
No.
And maybe if you're like a top tier doctor, I don't know, but like as a physical therapist, or especially a mental health therapist, like you weren't like, I'm going to be rich.
No.
You want to help people.
Yeah.
And then when you see that, you know, you're trying to help people so much that it's taking from you, when you don't recharge, that's when you burn out. Right?
Yeah.
And so from that experience of you burning out and then finding what helped fix you in a sense, is that what you now want to bring to clients?
I will say definitely that. I will also say too, I came also into this field because my mom, I think I might have disclosed this to you. My mom
Well, if not, you're going to know. Right?
My mom struggled like significantly for almost like 15 years with a really bad like clinical onset like OCD, but like, it kind of came on very rapidly. And looking back, she had like some co-occurring like autoimmune issues going on. So now, like with my training now as a functional nutritionist, I'm like looking at like, oh wow, there's so much research coming out in terms of like the body and mind. So looking at like systemic inflammation, autoimmunity, and like how that affects the brain. So while, you know, part of my mom's side of the family, we're Italian, we're kind of like, you know, very type A. You know, sometimes it helps, anxiety helps us. However, it makes us more perfectionist. I don't know, whatever, high achieving, caring. However, you know, I'm sure that there were some environmental things going on as well. However, I feel like her autoimmune condition really, kind of like onset her OCD, like to the extent where it was like very, it wasn't a coincidence that her symptoms were like really progressing when she had a lot of like co-occurring autoimmune conditions. Like she had a spinal cord infection, she had multiple other infections, all within the same span of like her OCD symptoms being really like heightened to the point that she had to, get treatment. And before that, like she was a very like vibrant, smart, accomplished, like beautiful person. So I think seeing her struggle with that and seeing like the best doctors around here, like Butler, who were doing everything and like caring, etc. But like they were just looking at her brain. They weren't really looking at like, okay, like what about what's going on in her body? Like what's all this like inflammation, this autoimmune stuff going on? Does that have any connection? So I think honestly, just having more of like a holistic, cohesive treatment model would be something that I would, very much be on board with.
and that's where your career is going. We're going to talk about that.
Yes.
So how would you describe functional nutrition in general?
Okay, so I would say functional nutrition is like, so you're looking at the body and like the different systems of the body, as you know, as a physical therapist. When one of those systems becomes like imbalanced, how can we restore that balance with nutrition? So like, not just like, okay, like I'm going to have like my macros and, my micros or whatever, like kind of like, okay, like what does my body need to heal or for my body systems to be more in optimal balance? Therefore, my body can work together more synergistically and function better. So, even though our gut might not seem related to our brain, if we have like imbalance in our gut bacteria, for instance, or a lack of diversity in our gut bacteria, that can very much affect our brain. Similarly, if our hormones are out of balance, that can also affect our brain, like our thyroid. So I think just different things like that. So like looking at like polyphenols in food or different plant compounds or even fiber or probiotics, or I'm a big proponent of kombucha.
Okay.
So like things that can help to modulate like different processes in the body that for you, your individual makeup may need. So
is there a way we can tell like what our body needs? So for instance, like I just did a DNA test, right?
Yeah.
So one of the entrepreneurs I really like to follow is Grant Cardone, and he has like the 10X book, the 10X rule. And he bought this company, which is 10X Health Systems. And what they have two different tests. So they do either a DNA test through a swab, and it'll tell you through your genetics, like as far as the digestive system, I guess there's five parts, like what enzymes or DNA from your parent is not working. Right? So if it's green, you have no mutations. If it's yellow, there's one mutation. If it's red, it means that you don't have either. You have both mutations.
Yeah.
So obviously, if it's like 1 out of 2, it's 50% working. If it's green, it's 100%. If it's red, it's 0. So based on those results, for me, they're like, okay, like this is what you need for supplements, for food supplements, because your body doesn't process these compounds that well.
Yes,
right?
yes. Yeah, exactly. So for instance, if like, an individual came and they said like, oh yeah, I'm having some gut issues, maybe we look at the gut, or maybe they're more prone to anxiety and maybe they have a problem with like methylation. Maybe they need like a methylated B12 or a methylated folate. So looking at like how we can support the body's systems in terms of more functional nutrition, whether it be supplements or finding like the food sources of these supplements that would help support, like for instance, for you, if you're having an enzyme that is, compromised in some way, it's not going to be able to be as effective. Therefore, it's going to affect other processes in the body.
So the way they explain this to me, it's like a chain.
Yes.
Right. So in the bottom one, what I had a mutation with, so I had to take L-methionate, one of the amino acids.
Yeah.
Right. And that was like the base.
Yes. Yeah.
And then as you go up the chain, well, if that part of the ladder is broke, so to speak, it affects up the chain.
Exactly.
Then you get to like the top one, and it's like, well, now, and this is where we get to the mind-body-gut connection. It was like, if you have one of these mutations, you're more likely to have like ADHD.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's different processes in the digestive system that result in, let's just say, mental impairments.
Yes, exactly.
Is that correct?
Yes, definitely. So even looking at like organic acids, like the way our body metabolizes things too, amino acids, like we could even look at, like DNA stuff. There's so many different, or stool tests, which sounds silly, but honestly, I think the stool test can be really, really like powerful in terms of like, what does your body need in terms of like balancing the bacteria in your gut, because that's a huge factor. So yeah, there are a number of functional lab tests out there that I could certainly recommend. Like,
could they go to you, or could they go to like their primary care?
Yeah, so I would probably want to work in conjunction with their primary care. I can recommend a test, and they can certainly ask their primary care. There are a number of lab tests online that, as a practitioner, I can recommend, and we could work like kind of through that route. Like Rupa Health, and there's a couple other functional lab testing out there for like practitioners to recommend. However, if an individual I'm working with is like, I don't really want to spend a lot of money on these functional lab tests, like I could say, okay, let's figure out like what symptoms you're presenting with and how we can approach this more from like an evidence-based nutrition science approach. Because, I definitely get it. I've been in school. I understand like not having a lot of money for all these functional lab tests. So like, what are you presenting with? What does the evidence in the research say? And how can we approach this? Looking at, nutrient dense foods, lifestyles, maybe supplements, if you're comfortable with that. But we would want to make sure we look at the different medications you're on, and just to make sure there's no like nutrient medication.
Because a lot of medications can affect how you process things.
Oh, and a lot of medications can also make you deficient in certain nutrients too. So that's like, it's definitely like, it's multifactorial.
And I can see you're excited about this, which tells me that like it's your passion.
Oh yes.
Right. And do you feel like this is the future of medicine? And I say that because like a lot of times when we talk about nutrition, mm-hmm. we don't really talk about it as like functional nutrition.
Yeah.
And how it affects the whole body.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of similar to how the physical therapy went. You'd have like your standard PT.
Yeah.
And then you have functional physical therapy.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So cool. Basically, like your standard PT was like, hey, your hamstring stretch, whatever. Mm-hmm. But like your functional PT would be like, okay, like here's a lunge with a rotation, right? Because you're adding more things. And I feel like that what you're doing now is maybe on the forefront of not just being a nutritionist, but actually being able to look at symptoms and be like, okay, well, if you have this, it most likely presents with you are deficient in X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where it's going?
I think so. I think that sounds, I would.
It sounded pretty good.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and even like to speak to the physical therapy aspect too, like inflammation, I'm sure is a huge buzzword that, is coming along. But like inflammation probably could be affecting some of the people that you work with, as you know. So like looking. And
let's stop there for a second. So let's talk about that. Okay. Like, I don't think people understand that a lot of these comorbidities, mm-hmm. a lot of these even things that present as could be neurological disorders, mm-hmm. it could be muscular disorders, have some root in mm-hmm. your body being inflamed.
Yeah.
Right? So if we could do all the physical therapy in the world we want, mm-hmm. but if we don't affect the inflammation mm-hmm. and take it down, then we're not really going to get the results we want.
Yes, inflammation can definitely hinder like a lot of different processes.
So say my body, why would my body be inflamed in the first? I'm just eating fast food?
No, I would say it's like definitely way more than that.
Okay.
So probably for like a host of reasons. It could be stress, right? It could be lack of movement. It could be also like not even if you're eating like processed foods. It could also be too, like if you're eating foods that are just more inflammatory. For instance, like for myself, I try to refrain from gluten and dairy, and maybe not everyone has to, but I find for me, it has helped with inflammation. Also too, like just maybe thinking about like, okay, like what foods make me feel a little bit more tired afterwards. So kind of being more attuned to your body too. I always empower patients, like, you know your body best, better than a doctor, right? Better than me. Like I really just want to inform and like, okay, why do I feel this way? Like why are these symptoms coming up? Like, okay, what did I have for breakfast? What did I have for lunch? What have I been eating? Am I drinking enough water? Am I drinking too much alcohol? Whatever, too much caffeine. So I would say it's like so many different things that could contribute, like refined carbs, processed foods, lack of movement. I think stress is a huge one. I also do think like toxicants, lifestyle.
So that's a lot of things.
It's a lot of stuff.
So like if you were like Mark, like here are 3 things I want you to do. The top 3 things to reduce inflammation in your body. What would you tell me?
Okay, so I would say anti-inflammatory diet. So pretty much nutrient dense whole foods, like think omega-3s, like salmon, but like good quality salmon. Maybe some like really good vegetables, like leafy greens, because that will help as well. Good fiber, like gut healthy. So keeping it simple, like nutrient dense whole foods that support your gut.
So that's one.
Okay, so that's one. Movement, I would say.
Very important too.
Sleep.
And sleep, okay.
Yes, and then and obviously gut health, but all of those things I think in conjunction would help to improve your gut health. Like sleep and gut health is huge. Diet and gut health is huge. Movement and gut health is huge, right? So like it's so interconnected. So it's hard to say just 3, but I would say those are some big ones. And
I feel like when we talk about how people feel on a daily basis, there's one thing I really want to say, which you hit on. Mm-hmm. It's like, I have a patient that I've been working with for, I think 12 years. He's pretty much the only patient I keep. He's like an 82-year-old priest, which is funny because I'm Jewish, but I don't know which God's the right one. So I'm trying to get into both sides. So he told me that his old doctor told him that no one knows the body better than themselves. Right? So like that stayed with me the whole time. Mm-hmm. As a therapist, as a fitness instructor, as a self-defense instructor. Yeah. I know what to do, but like I don't know what you're feeling. Yeah. So somebody has to actually like listen to their body and then take action to make it better. Yeah. Yeah. So I also know that like when we are not feeling good, it's really hard to be happy and follow our passion. Oh yeah. So when people are unhappy, they're not motivated, like I think you really need to start working on your health first to get your body and your mind in sync. Yeah. Right? I agree. And this would be an interesting question for you. So I've been doing this for a while, and the diet we give in our transformation programs is the anti-inflammation diet. Oh, that's great. Right? Awesome. So most people don't know that, but we know why we're doing that. Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about like fixing mental health, and I'm going to talk just as like a layman, that's not my area. I don't believe you can fix your mental health without first fixing your physical health. I 100% am on board. Yeah. Right? Because I feel like it's much easier to fix your body versus get everything right up here. Yeah. But now also kind of what you're saying is, well, if you do fix your body by eating healthier, by sleeping, by moving, this starts to fix itself. Yes, right? Exactly. And I feel like when people, and I could be totally wrong, this is my opinion, when people go on medication, antidepressants, all this stuff, you're not actually fixing the problem. It's a Band-Aid, because you're also not fixing the source of what's going on, right? The underlying cause, right? So if I'm trying to fix my mental health, but I'm not exercising, I'm not sleeping well, I'm eating fast food, how much is that medication going to do, right? What are your thoughts on that? Yes, so that was something that was a huge, barrier for me, especially as a young therapist. These kids eating kind of like crap and just like playing video games, not getting outside, and maybe their parents not having enough connection with them, or even for like adults too. I think mental health obviously doesn't stigmatize, as we know, doesn't discriminate. And there are plenty of adults who struggle, and they might be taking a medication and, eating crap, and like, why isn't my antidepressant working? Like, okay, well, what else are you doing? Because it's not holistic. It's one part. Yeah. Yeah. And obviously there are individuals who have greater genetic predispositions, for, various health concerns, mental health concerns. However, I think it's multifactorial. It's like multidimensional. Like if your relationships suck and you're not happy in your career, that's like a primary, it could be a huge setback for you. And you keep reliving it each day. Yeah. So on the contrary too, you could be eating really well and doing all these great things, but then if your environment sucks, or like you know what I mean? So I think it's so interconnected, but I think what you said in terms of the mind and the body, like,
I agree. Mental health is so much physical health, and physical health is mental health.
I don't think it's ever talked about. I haven't really ever heard that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think that is so important. Like so important. Like I think a lot of it stems from the gut too, but like I'm sure you're familiar with PNI.
I'm not.
Oh, psychoneuroimmunology.
Okay, tell me.
So like seeing how like, have you ever realized, or I'm sure, like for instance, I remember one time in grad school, I had like exams and I got like sick and like, so like basically it looks at the connection between your nervous system and your immune system.
Sure. Okay.
And how, so basically if like you're stressed or you're not sleeping well, like how that can affect your health and therefore affect like your mental health. So that's a new kind of emerging area of research too, just kind of highlighting the importance of taking care of yourself. So that's something else too. I really want to work with clients on like preventative ways to like say if like you have a genetic predisposition to depression, like, okay, what are some preventative ways that you can, work on your lifestyle, nutrition, etc., to kind of, be proactive about that.
Yeah. So here's the thing that frustrates me the most. Let me back up for a second.
Yeah.
So I just learned, because again, this isn't my field, which is like SSRIs, so selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They don't actually increase the amount of serotonin in your brain. All they do is they siphon it off. So I don't know, I'm just going to use 100, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they'll give you 10 every hour, whatever it is, right? So that means if we didn't have enough serotonin in the beginning, but now you're just giving me a little bit each hour, minute, or whatever, I'm still not going to be happier than I was.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, that just by definition, that's not going to work by itself.
It's like a Band-Aid.
Yeah. And so what we need to do is start increasing the serotonin, increasing the dopamine. And what's the way we really do that? By working out.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
Definitely by working out. Also the gut too. Gut bacteria produces so many neurotransmitters too. So like, yeah. So
this is, okay, and this is perfect. So in order to actually really, like, I would say, help your mental health, you always need to work out. You need to eat healthy.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so when we have clients and they're working out, they're doing it, you see a lot of times people, they hit one speed bump and they're like, I need to stop working out. Right? And as a coach and a physical therapist, I'm like, wait a minute, like this is not where you actually, the decision you want to make.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or they're like, my mental health's not good, I can't work out right now. As a coach, I need to tell you the truth. Like, no, Lauren, that's exactly when you want to work out.
That's I know for myself, those are the times I need to work out.
100%, right? So like when I tell patients or clients that, but they're not in the mental state now to actually make the decision that's going to benefit themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So when people are in that kind of fight or flight, they can't make the decisions that are going to benefit themselves. So how is it that you, as a therapist, a client, a practitioner rather, can help somebody like that, right? Because they hear the words, and I understand it. Your brain's just not registering it because you're not vibrationally at that level.
Yeah.
Right? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I'm not like a workout coach, so, but I know, like, for instance, like, even, like muscle, like training, like lifting weights and stuff like that helps with testosterone.
Sure.
So, like, for women, that's actually important in terms of their hormonal imbalance and their mood. So, like,
women have testosterone, yes.
Oh, yes, we do, yeah. So, and it's healthy for our mood and our hormonal balance. So, like, for instance, like maybe if I'm going to the gym and I'm like really not feeling it, maybe I'll just like do a little bit of like some like weights or something to kind of, that endurance so I can work on like testosterone, which sounds weird as a girl, but like that helps with hormones. And
it's the reason why men lose weight faster than women.
Oh,
because they have more testosterone.
Yeah. Okay.
So as men and women age, their levels of testosterone decrease, right? Interesting fact. They've done studies now that men today, like younger than me, have the lowest levels of recorded testosterone in like the history.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like men are not full of testosterone anymore. And you can kind of see it by the way society has been playing out. Right?
Yeah.
Which is an interesting fact.
That is interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, women need testosterone to help with that because we both have estrogen and testosterone.
Yeah.
So you hit a good point with when you're stressed out, it affects your immune system. And I want to talk about that. I also want to say I have an Italian mother and grandmother. They're always stressed out. Right?
It's relatable here.
Yeah. So like I understand the anxiety, the OCD-ness. I think it's just maybe an Italian thing. I don't know.
You probably. Yeah.
So just talk to me about that. So someone's stressed out. What's going to happen to their gut?
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good question, huh?
So, yeah, that is a really good question. I will say, so I found yoga recently because I'm someone that since high school, I played soccer my whole life, like did gymnastics. I've always been like, being active always helps me. But I found like the last 2 years, I need to sometimes slow down because sometimes doing cardio or like, sometimes you just got to sit with how you're feeling, right? So I've been trying to incorporate more yoga for my mind-body connection and for my gut. So that's like, so kind of just like honestly thinking about what ways for you are going to help your body and your mind get into that rest, digest, and restore mode. So like, to help with that parasympathetic, dominance mode, right? Rather than the fight flight. So things like yoga, things like deep breathing, making sure your exhales are kind of longer than your inhales. Honestly, even like maybe it sounds kind of wooey, but like walking on the beach barefoot, maybe not right now, but like, getting outside, connecting with others, all of those things are really going to be good for your stress. And that's actually going to help with your gut. I will also say too, like trying to refrain from refined carbs, processed foods. I will say that there's a lot of research too that shows that gluten and dairy, even if like you don't have allergies to it, they can cause sensitivities and actually can cause inflammation. So
I heard dairy causes a lot of inflammation.
Yeah, so I've been trying to stay clear of that and I've been feeling my best. I'm not saying it's for everyone, because I think again, you know your body best. But I would say things like that. Also too, like daylight, like, so all of these things that are like more like thinking about like nature and like evolution, like.
So basically trying to slow down
When needed, like kind of, yeah. But also too thinking about like, okay, what can I eliminate from my diet? There's like this 4R protocol we learn in functional medicine, but to keep it like kind of simple, like, okay, like what can I do for myself? Maybe in my environment, what can I do to kind of slow down my body? What can I do in terms of nutrition intake? What foods can I refrain from or should I refrain from? Also too, like paying attention to when you're eating, like mindfully eating, right? Like,
what does that mean?
Okay.
Because I'm a guy, right? So I just scarf things down.
No. Mindfulness is like, as a therapist, is something that I really try to ground into. But like, so if I'm eating
like,
an apple.
This is a good steak. Like how?
Well, yeah, like looking at the steak, like, oh wow, like like maybe smelling it, looking at it, or whatever.
I think I'd lose a few friends.
Okay, let's take an apple for example, right? Like, okay, so we have like an apple, like maybe like smelling it, like taking a bite of it, like, oh wow, like the texture of it, like what does it taste like? Honestly, just like trying to slow down and like actually like just like enjoy the apple and like
be in the moment.
Be in the moment, yeah. And like when you're eating it, like not just to eat it and like, okay, I'm eating it at my lunch and I'm just like kind of like not even paying attention. Like you want to actually like bring all your senses to your food.
Do you feel like that's missing a lot now in like the technology generation?
100%.
I mean, like I know for myself, if I'm watching, say I'm watching TV, which I don't usually do, I usually watch YouTube. But like if a commercial comes on, like say it's a football game or whatever, I immediately go to my phone.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I just checked Instagram 3 seconds ago and I'm checking it again. Yeah. Like, and that.
Yeah, I don't think that's good for your brain either. I feel like, I mean, not to get off track.
Well, I told you I had ADHD, right? So it really helps.
I think that relates to me
I get dopamine hits.
Yeah, I think honestly there's there's an evolutionary mismatch I would like to chat about too if we have time. But to get back to like, the gut health and like mindfulness, like I think sometimes just taking, trying to be more present when we're eating, that can really help with digestion.
Would that help us eat less too?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think as long as like I think mind-body attunement is huge too. Like, like I honestly, like I've been doing this for a while and like pretty attuned with my body. Like I don't crave like certain things. Like I eat when I'm like full. Like, I think like just, I've learned that inherently from my body and just, probably being in the field too. But I think like really slowing down to eat your food because you're not going to be able to digest and absorb and assimilate the nutrients from your food if you're just like, okay, I'm on a lunch call or lunch meeting right now and I'm stressed and I'm eating, like your body's not going to be able to digest that properly.
If you're stressed, but and you can't get that under control.
Yeah.
Right? Say we're a lawyer and we're just going.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we still eat healthy, but we're still stressed.
Yeah.
Does the food not help as much? Because I would feel like almost the stress, the anxiety would override eating healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably recommend in that case. I mean, obviously, I know life is stressful. I would recommend for the person to, as much as they can, try to be like, you know, maybe take some deep breaths and just trying to like focus on that meal, but also digestive enzymes work really well. So I'm sure you're familiar with digestive enzymes, but like I think those can really support like your stomach acid and breaking down, like for instance, like the proteins or to the amino acids from the meal that you just consumed. So you're actually able to absorb and assimilate those nutrients. Because when you're stressed, your body is not going to be able to get in that parasympathetic nervous system mode to digest that food.
Okay,
it's just going to be like a floating around, and you're just stressed doing the next thing at work. So for your body to actually digest and absorb the food and the nutrients that you need from like that healthy, nutrient dense, whatever, you need to actually get your body in a state of like somewhat relaxation mode.
So if I'm understanding this correctly,
so
we want to use food to help us heal.
Yes.
Okay. But that won't be as effective if we can't help ourselves calm down.
Yes.
Right? However, food can help us calm down.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
But if we're living in a flight or fight, right, and we're having all these thoughts, then that's really where everything is going to get messed up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we, from my limited knowledge, would be like, okay, so how do I use that anxiety? Or how do I use that stress productively? Mm-hmm. The only thing I can really come up with for me, and maybe because I'm a guy in this way I think, is workout, right? Punch a bag.
Yeah.
And then eat well, and then we can help this cycle. Is there a different way to do it?
Oh my gosh, I think honestly it's so bio-individual. Like what works for you isn't going to work for me, right? So like, I don't know, it might sound a little wooey, but in the morning I make a smoothie and I put like all my, my digestive enzymes, my supplements or whatever. And I like sit with my dog and we look out the window and I just try to like drink my smoothie, drink my coffee, like, whatever. And then maybe later on I'll go to the gym and get some stress out like halfway through the, whatever.
And how important is it to start your day off right? Because most people wake up late, they push the alarm button 3 times, they run out of the house.
Yeah.
And now, like for me, and when you talk about wooey, like that's my alley.
Okay.
But like I'm very like vibrational.
Yeah.
So like I understand like you're setting the intention, the tone of your day as being stressed and being, rushed versus like, oh, I'm going to be able to come and do this. And then I'm going to start my day. Right. And now I get that. Not everyone can do that because maybe they have to work at 6, but that means wake up earlier. So you can set the intention of your day.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe that doesn't work for everyone too. Like maybe instead, because I'm being realistic. Like for instance, like I've worked remotely the last 2 years. So it might be looking different, but before, like during the pandemic, I worked at the hospital. So I would be waking up at 5:30 in the morning, making my smoothie and trying to like drink it like in a calm way before I get to a psych hospital working with patients. So like clearly, like you have to kind of work with what you have, like, and everyone, what works for you isn't going to work for me, but it's kind of like finding what works for you. And yeah, like, I think like what you said, like, okay, I'm going to let out some, energy or some stress by doing this exercise regimen or whatever, and then having my meal after. So it's kind of about finding what works best for you. And again, your body best.
So I had Ryan Baxter, who's a nurse practitioner, and he works with mental health patients, usually adolescents.
Okay.
Great guy who's on the podcast. And one of the things he said is that people, like, and I'm paraphrasing, people don't understand that you're not supposed to be happy all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And when they're not happy all the time, they confuse that, my words, with being depressed or not having a good life, right? And then they look for medication and stuff like that. But like that's part of being human. So we talk about being woo-wee. So for me, we're just spirits have a human experience, right? So we're on this journey together because you want to play, interact. But happiness, if you were always happy, you would never evolve.
So true.
Right? Like if you were happy and you were a caveman, cavewoman, like you wouldn't leave the cave. I'm happy. I'm starving, but I'm pretty happy. I'm not moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, as we go through life and we have contrasts and things that we don't prefer happen to us, well, those are necessary so we can evolve to become somebody else. And as a mental health therapist, have you seen that where like society has been like, I'm not happy all the time, probably because I'm looking at Instagram and it looks like everyone's a model and has a yacht, right? So we have unrealistic expectations of what life actually is.
Yeah.
And we start cherishing or think we should cherish things that we shouldn't cherish, like material things, which are great, but it's really the human connection.
Yeah.
Like, can you kind of...
Yeah, I know. Such a great question.
I am a podcast host.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like we obviously can't be happy all the time, right?
And I don't think you're supposed to.
I don't think that's healthy to be happy all the time. Perhaps. I don't know. However, I feel like, we don't appreciate happiness or joy if we don't live in those difficult feelings. Like, we have to, I've learned for myself too, like you have to kind of sit through, may I swear?
Shit.
You have to sit through your shit. Like you have to feel your shit and sit through your shit.
I think feeling it might go a little further, but that's fine. We can
okay, whatever. Yeah. But you have to sit with your feelings and accept them. You really
and understand they're natural.
Yeah. And accept your feelings and like, it's okay. And like, just accept them. And like, I think you do more suffering if you suppress them, or I'm going to even like the gym. Like I've seen this, I've worked with patients with eating disorders. Like, okay, I'm going to avoid how I feel or suppress how I feel, go work out, go do this, go, engage in behaviors, X, Y, and Z. Like there's something to be said of just like sitting with your feelings. And I think for the last couple of years for me, like that's been the most influential in like my healing. Like, okay, actually like meditating or doing yoga or like sitting with how I actually feel. And it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to be like, this sucks. Like, or whatever. But I also, speaking back to like your Instagram reference, I do think a big part of mental health, like a lot of people struggling with mental health today, I won't say it's just about nutrition. I think it's a huge part of that. I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit in terms of like soil and, different practices in terms of like how our foods have been made now. But I do think there's like this evolutionary mismatch too. Like, our ancestors were hunters and gatherers. They had like a specific purpose. They were moving, they were outside gathering food. And all the women had a role. They had like authentic connections with people. They weren't like on their phones or, whatever, and sitting all day. Like they were moving, they were outside, they were getting that natural sunlight, like circadian rhythms, like, they weren't glued to their phones. And like, I really do think social media is amazing, has so many like amazing potentials. But at the same time, we have to be very cautious because as a woman too, like, I'm obviously not immune to being like, oh, wow, I don't look like her or whatever. Like, so I have to be mindful for myself too. And obviously I know everyone, can relate to that. But I do.
But as a woman,
yeah.
I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
How do you think like social media has affected the expectations of women? How old are you? I don't even know. 25?
I'm 32.
32.
Nice.
Like how do you feel like we live in an attention society?
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And nowadays, like a lot of women can get attention for what they post on social media. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, okay, that's great. Like I get it. It's dopamine. Yeah. You do what you want to do. Yeah. That's your life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But there comes a point where like you can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. If you're 40, you can't be posting the thong picture on the yacht. Right? You know what I'm saying?
I've never posted the thong picture.
Well, not you specifically, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I think women today are like, it's so skewed because a lot of it is like, well, you're getting attention for wearing less clothes on Instagram. Like, I think that's where we're at right now in society. Yeah. And like, so I don't know, is there like self-value coming from that? Like, is it messing up? Like, have you seen that in clients or wherever where like...
Yeah, I can speak from my experience with clients, from my experience just as I have two sisters, I have a lot of girlfriends, I'm obviously, not immune to this stuff too. I think I would be curious as to why that person is doing that. Like, why can't they find validation perhaps from other sources? And
well, because I think that gets the quickest response. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen workout videos from women.
Yeah.
Within 10 minutes of them posting, it's like 600 likes.
Yeah.
Right. I can write a book, a children's book, and get 250 likes after 3 months. You know,
I know. I can write a great white paper, but if
you might get 3 likes.
Yeah, but if I I don't know, maybe not me, but another girl put a bikini on, they'd probably get 1 million. You know? And I'm writing a good white paper on whatever. So
and so does it just from a professional standpoint, and this is your area, doesn't that skew things? Like, like are they going to take time to write a paper, or are they just going to take that bikini photo? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think honestly, I've worked for a couple years with individuals with eating disorders, and I think that's a huge trigger for a lot of females and males. And males, yeah. With body dysphoric and disorder, and just, you know, also too, like women and men, they don't see how things are photoshopped, you know, like, So I do think social media, or even like phones, technology, they have served so many great, you know, purposes for sure. However, I think we need to be mindful and cautious, because I think, especially with our children, adolescents, I think it can be causing more harm than good. And that concerns me.
And that growing up with that. We didn't grow up with that.
Yes. Yeah. Right? I think I had my first phone when I could drive at like 17, you know? So yeah.
Did you have a MySpace?
I had a MySpace, but my dad was not happy about it.
He didn't want Tom to be your friend?
No. Yeah.
So talk to me then. So what would you say is like the biggest deficiency in nutrition for like the average person?
The biggest, I'm sorry, what?
Deficiency.
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so I would say, I know magnesium is one.
Why though? I've heard that.
Yeah.
But I made the mistake of taking magnesium. I was on the toilet. Right? Because too much magnesium, I was like...
Maybe it was the dose you were taking.
I was like, I don't know, this doesn't seem right.
It's a cofactor for over like 200 processes in your body, like for ATP production.
For energy.
Energy, of course. Nervous system function, which is really, is kind of why I'm more interested in it from like the mental health perspective. Also digestive support too, inflammation.
So it helps with decreased inflammation?
Yes,
magnesium?
Yes, and it helps with nervous system health as well.
Calming it down?
Yes, exactly. It has kind of a calming effect on your nervous system if you're deficient. I would also say like B12 too, and folate, because both like more bioavailable forms of those. So for instance, someone who may have a genetic variant may not be able to, you know how like a multivitamin might just have a basic B12, like not the methylated form. Someone who may have a genetic variant and they can't absorb that regular B12, they're not going to be able to absorb that B12 that they need so badly for serotonin, like GABA dopamine, which is like a precursor for all those different things.
So you know what's interesting with that? So when I did the genetic testing, it then gives you the supplements that they would want you to supplement with.
Oh yeah.
And they have their supplement company, but we use Prestige Labs. So we sell supplements, right?
Oh yeah.
So everything I needed, I already had upstairs. And some of it I wasn't taking. So one of the main things was, I think it was L-methanate. It's one of the amino acids?
Yeah.
Okay. That was like the main one I needed.
Yeah.
Right? And then I needed my B12 complex, I think magnesium and folate.
Okay.
Those were the ones I needed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I would sometimes take a multivitamin, but sometimes not. But since they're like, this is what we recommend, I was like, I take it every day now.
Yeah.
Right? And I do feel better. I feel kind of more clear. But it's basically those things you just said.
Yeah.
Because I had the genetic variant mutation on one side that they were like, this is what you need. Right? Because if we don't ingest these vitamins or molecules, like we don't make them on their own.
So like B12, like even folate too. I would also say zinc, because zinc can actually...
I think I was good with that. Yeah. I had no deficit.
Zinc helps to modulate like actually gut functioning and neurotransmitter functioning too. So like and a lot of what's happening, like a lot of what's produced in the gut, like significantly affects like the brain and so like how you feel, how you think, etc. So I would say even too, back to your point of like what are people deficient in, it could be also too like just various like diverse gut bacteria, or even like enzymes that they need for their body to digest their foods, or even honestly just nutrient density foods. Like at the grocery store, for instance, like I recommend to individuals, like, go in the outside, like where the produce is, like the meat sections, like whatever, just stay in the perimeter rather than
don't go to the ringdings.
Yeah, don't go to all the processed stuff, because I think by getting all these processed foods, like, you could be deficient in all of these different things. If you eat like a nutrient dense whole foods diet, hopefully anti-inflammatory, I mean, you could get into paleo, ketogenic, or whatever. Like, there are different benefits depending on you, based on those diets. But I think trying to just make sure you're getting as much nutrient, like as much bang for your buck as you can.
So basically eat healthy.
Yes, eat real food.
Eat real food. Yeah. And so if someone's struggling right now with their mental health, they might not even have thought of checking their gut health. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's an avenue where they can go, let me find somebody like you who's a functional nutritionist.
Yeah.
Maybe do a test.
Yeah.
See what I'm deficient in, and then see how I'm feeling, like my mental clarity.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Do you think a lot of these deficiencies are because of the soil and the way, like, we process foods now versus, like, saying, I don't know, the 1940s, whatever?
I do. I don't know if you've heard of Zach Bush. He's a medical doctor, but he studies the soil. He studies basically how much the soil has been compromised over the years in terms of like nutrient density. So clearly we get our crops from our soil. So if our soil is significantly compromised due to all these different additives, chemicals, our crops are going to be compromised too. So like, it's so frustrating too, because like I do try to preach like doing organic as much as possible, but it's so expensive. Like I know that, like when I was in grad school, I wasn't eating organic. I was like eating like, as bare minimum nutrient dense as possible, because I think that's something else that is a huge issue too, is like mental health. Like look at the populations that are most, I know mental health affects everyone, but a big proportion of people with mental health may have to do with like socioeconomic status, and they can't get access to these good nutrient dense foods that are organic or farm raised, etc., because of their situation. So I would definitely say I think soil has an impact on our gut functioning as well. But yeah, in terms of like just different deficiencies in terms of like micronutrients, like minerals.
So say you can't afford to eat healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I'm going to preface this with like, if you don't invest in your health now, you're going to spend a lot more money and time trying to fix it later on.
Oh, 100%.
Doctor visits, co-pays, MRIs, surgeries. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I get that. Everyone has to make their own personal decisions. But say I couldn't afford it. Mm-hmm. Should I then supplement with like a multivitamin?
So I will say, and I've been trained, and the evidence I think supports this, that it's always important to get your nutrients from food first. However,
can your body tell the difference though?
Well, food is more bioavailable.
Okay, which means it's ready to be used quicker.
Yes, exactly. However, if you're going to do the supplement route, get a good quality supplement, which I'm sure you guys have.
Sure.
So
they're made for Olympians.
Wow. Yeah. So supplements, I'm not opposed to at all. I take them. But I would say like you can't just be taking supplements in like water. You know what I mean?
Why do you think people are afraid of supplements? Because for the longest time before I was trained in the supplements, I didn't really take anything.
Yeah, no, same here. Well, to be quite honest, I think like for me, like I only, as you have great quality supplements, obviously, but like for me, like I would have to go through a professional supplement company to make sure they're tested, and their terms of like in terms of like purity, they're very like, at the highest level, because you don't want to do more damage to your body by having all these like extra synthetic stuff in there.
Did you know? Well, our Prestige Lash supplements, they were made in the same plants where Whole Foods makes their stuff. Uh-huh. So it gets rated.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
But did you know that a lot of supplements are just fillers, and a lot of it is caffeine?
Yeah, I have a colleague who makes his own digestive supplements, and years ago he was, kind of talking about that.
So what happens is like you take this supplement, but now your dose of caffeine
that's crazy
is through the roof. Wow. Because it's in every supplement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing we learned, which is why our supplements don't have that.
Good.
One does as like if you want to add it in, but they don't.
Yeah.
So then talk to me about sleep. I can't sleep. I learned, so I was watching a podcast, and there's two different kinds of people who have trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
There's the first person who can't fall asleep, right? And then there's the person who can fall asleep but wakes up all the time.
Oh, okay.
Right? And they could be actually, I believe they said it was like different deficiencies or gene mutations would cause both of those. Right? And I don't know the science behind that, but like, say I just want to get better sleep. What do I do?
Yeah, well, it's a really loaded question. So I would say, I think your gut has a lot to do with sleep. Stress has a lot to do with sleep. Being adequately hydrated, making sure you're doing something meaningful throughout the day.
So you feel good.
Yeah. I would say too, like even, maybe doing like reading before bed or maybe some kind of like meditation. But if you're waking up like consistently throughout the night, you might have like some, from the research, at least what I'm trained in, you could have like some toxicant stuff going on.
Okay.
Like, maybe you have, I don't know, maybe you need some help with detox. Maybe you need some nutrients to support detox. Because in my experience, that could be part of it.
So what would I be eating that would cause me to not fall asleep? Would it be high caffeine foods? Would it be eating too close to bed?
It could, yeah. I mean, like everyone's so different.
Because I like to eat like a lot before I can fall right asleep.
Yeah,
that's just my body.
Yeah, so everyone's like everyone's biochemical makeup is like different too. So like also too like what your body's used to. Like if you're used to like having a good workout at night and then eating and then falling asleep, like and that works for you, great. Like like don't change it if it's not broken. However, like if you're having a hard time staying asleep like every night, like you might want to check like what's my toxic load like. Am I drinking too much alcohol? What's my environment like? Maybe I'm.
So you don't suggest cocaine before bed?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
That might keep you up.
Maybe when you wake up.
Okay. That was a joke.
But no, I would honestly say like gut, like your gut has a lot to do with sleep.
Okay.
I was trying to find the.
We got studies all over the place here. She came prepared.
Yeah.
I'd expect nothing less of my guest.
Yeah, but sleep is so important to gut health and inflammation.
Because sleep helps decrease inflammation.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting studies on sleep and how much it has to do with your gut health and your overall like mental health too.
Well, you look for that. Yeah, I would say like, especially like if you're sleep deprived, again, you're not waking up happy, right? Yeah. You're irritable. If you work out, you're not repairing your muscles because that's when they repair, right? So when I think people don't prioritize sleep as much as they should nowadays.
No, definitely.
Right? Where, and for some people it could be 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, but I feel like it's always important to prioritize that as part of your routine.
Oh my gosh. Sleep is like one of the big five, I would say. Yeah.
What would be the other four?
Well, I found the sleep study.
Okay, we're going to go right to the sleep study.
If I could look at a couple of these. So this was a 2019, so a little bit outdated here, but a 2019 review and analysis of 49 studies covering 4,506 participants found that mind-body practices such as yoga, mindfulness, and meditation can be effective in treating insomnia and improving sleep quality. And then, so another study here too, shows that sleep also greatly affects gut functioning, helping to balance good to bad bacteria ratio in the gut, microbiome diversity, having implications for mood health, as well as synthesizing a number of neurotransmitters relative to mood in the gut. So kind of like just looking at, another one, sleep loss can trigger anxiety. In a 2019 study, after one night of sleep deprivations, patients reported a 30% rise in anxiety levels. So like, sleep can definitely impact your mental health. Sorry.
It's like regulating it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting because I always think for myself, I think muscles, right?
Yeah.
So that's when your muscles repair. But when you're sleeping, your body's actually making the different, what did it say? Hormones or?
It's like restoring everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah. So like it can affect anxiety, it can affect mood, energy, of course, digestion, which, therefore hinders your gut health.
Yeah. So it's all really connected.
It's all connected. Yeah.
What, for you, is there something in your life, like a challenge that you had to overcome personally that you want to share, which allowed you to be this version of Lauren?
Yeah, sure. I would say multiple. I would say like mostly growing up with like my mom was something that I think like has had a very influential impact on me professionally and personally. I think it has allowed me to be like a very compassionate and understanding person. And also too, like, I think it helped me see that like someone struggling with mental health, it's not just like it's not something they can just snap out of. It's something that's going on in the brain and the body. So the body and the brain are so interconnected. I also will say too, I've struggled greatly with my own anxiety, as well as depression, because I think they go hand in hand.
Is that, and I appreciate you being transparent, right? Is that something that you feel is hard to admit because you're a health therapist?
Honestly, I actually find that I try to be open. Even when I worked in the different hospital settings, for with clients or individuals, I felt was appropriate. Because some of the best therapists I've had have kind of been human with me and been like, hey, Lauren, like I've struggled too. Sure. But as a therapist, I will say, like at first I was like, oh crap, like I'm a therapist dealing with anxiety. Like this is not supposed to happen, like, etc. But I honestly think it's made me way more of a better therapist, way more compassionate and empathetic too, because I think there's something to be said of like, okay, you studied the hell of this, you had all this great professional experience. I've worked in a research lab. I currently work studying mental health and nutrition. So looking at the body and mental health. So I'm involved in a research study with that. But I do think there's something to be said about like actually like living that dark place. Like I definitely struggled with depression and anxiety. And as a therapist, seeing a therapist wasn't really easy. However, the best therapists I had were like, just talked to me like I was human, and they knew I was a therapist, and they were like, it's okay. Like, I've struggled too. And like, just knowing that we're all human and like, it's okay. And like, I think that was something that really, really was like influential for me. And like having, my grandfather, who I'm close to my poppy, he just like held that space for me and like still thought the world of me, even though I was struggling. So like, it helped me to I definitely felt a sense of shame about it for sure. But I think kind of opening up to people I felt comfortable to and appropriate to, I think it can actually really help and make more progress with patients too.
Yeah, I think a lot of times you have to walk the road first.
Yeah.
To know what someone else is going through.
Yes.
And someone told me, they said the best therapists have their own therapist.
Yes.
Right? Is that like a thing, statement?
I agree. I have a couple of friends that are therapists, and I agree. I think that is spot on. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you then, so now we are going into a new endeavor, right? We almost want to be, or we do want to be, a business owner.
Consulting.
A consultant.
Consulting.
Can you kind of talk to me about that? Like what you want to do and like maybe some of the challenges you're kind of worried about facing?
Yeah. So I definitely don't want to be like I don't want to be in lieu of mental health treatment, meaning if someone is struggling with anxiety or depression, 100% I would love to consult with them, to meet with them, to inform them, to support them. However, they still need to, be seeing their psychiatrist if that's appropriate, or maybe their mental health therapist if they need that level of care. However, where I want to be is like informing people who may have a mental health condition, right, but are functioning okay. And maybe they're working with a psychiatrist, maybe they're working with a therapist. However, maybe they want to know like what else they can do in conjunction with their medication, with their psychotherapy.
So the more holistic part.
Exactly.
Okay.
So like kind of informing, but also I can create like personalized nutrition plans with lifestyle, like mind-body lifestyle approaches too, which there's a lot of research to support that. So kind of more informing and empowering. And also I can recommend different functional lab tests. or even like, based on my, I've done consulting for various companies and worked with, with patients of all different health conditions. So I think like more of just kind of connecting the dots between the mind and the body, and like kind of, not to go back to my mom, but like for instance, for like almost 20 years, we had no idea that her OCD was related to what was going on in terms of her autoimmune condition. So like, and I remember just like wanting so bad for why can't we help my mom? Like, why can't these doctors help my mom? So like, I just want to really inform and educate and empower people to, because mental health is something that really like bothers me. Like I'm someone like driving and I see someone like homeless on the street, and I just like, I want to promote awareness about it. I want to end the stigma. And I think there is so much to be said about what we can do in terms of our environment, but mostly like what we can put into our bodies, fuel our bodies, and how that can impact our brain, which I like to call mental health brain health, because it's not less stigma, and it's less.
I actually really like that. It sounds pretty cool.
No, and
I want to have brain health.
Yeah, and it's like our brain health is connected to our body, and like we have one, like it's not our brain and our body, it's all connected. So I think just informing, and like, I can obviously make personalized recommendations as a nutritionist. While I'm a licensed therapist, I won't be, it's not in lieu of mental health treatment. So like, I can definitely support with anxiety and depression, but from a more holistic functional perspective.
So I think one of the interesting things is my mom's very similar to your mom. She got an autoimmune disease when she was 16. Basically, when she had me, they wanted her to abort me, not have me, because she wasn't supposed to live. There's a high probability she wouldn't live. And I think as a child of a mother who is sick, right, for lack of a better word, it shapes you in ways where it can either really hinder you or it can really benefit you, right? And my journey through that was very sensitive as a kid. Right? Like yeah, like very, but here's the thing, I'm a man, I'm a boy. Yeah. So like, you can believe whatever you want, but for me being a man, like being that sensitive is not a good trait, in my perspective.
I can understand. Yeah.
So I had to really learn how to like be my own person, not be that sensitive. And I did that through the martial arts, like through the men that I looked up to. Yeah. And learning how to deal with that. But because I've always had that sensitive side, I can understand people, I can connect with them, and I can read them really well. Because I don't know if you had to do this, but like when your mom's sick, you'd have to kind of look at them and be like, okay, what kind of mood is she in right now? What kind of day is this going to be? Like, because there's been many times where I would say things that were benign and she would flip. Now, don't get this wrong. I have the best mom in the world. You could probably ask anybody. We're going to fight about this. But you could ask any of my friends. Like, your parents are the best parents. But when you have somebody who has an autoimmune disease, they're on a lot of medication. Yeah. My mom's literally been on prednisone 40 years straight. People are on prednisone for 2 weeks. My mom's been on it for 40 years straight. Wow. I'm talking about straight. Wow. So it messes you up when you're on all that medication, right? So you never know like how they're going to take stuff. Yeah. So it allowed me to be a really good physical therapist. It allowed me, because I grew up with it. Yeah. So I already knew. Yeah. You know, and I think that's one of the traits that makes you really good at what you do, is because you understand it. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
I've always been very like hyper attuned to people's suffering and distress, I will say, from a young age. Even before my mom got sick. Yeah. I think it's just.
And I think that can be a skill.
Oh yeah, 100%. Right?
That's why they talk about like in entrepreneurs, like ADHD is a trait of a successful entrepreneur. As long as you can hone it and use it, like you're good, because you're pulled in all these different directions. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You mentioned I have a couple more questions, but you mentioned about, was it the evolution
mismatch?
Yes. Yeah. The evolution mismatch. Yeah. What does that mean?
Okay, so pretty much how much have our foods been changed? Okay. Like right? Like how much have our foods been changed? Like significantly, right? Also, too, we're not getting as much movement as we used to. even circadian rhythm. Like a lot of people are shift workers, right? Even doctors. So they're not really getting, access to like sunlight or getting that vitamin D, the active form of vitamin D. I think our gut health is significant too. I really do. I think gut health is a huge player here. And that stems from the soil. That also stems from our lifestyle being more, kind of
Instagramming.
Yeah, on our phones, or that instant, dopamine, whatever release, or even like always, like our brains are always on, and I think also too, we had like more of a simple way of life back then, like
sometimes I miss the 90s.
Yes, right. I know. I've always been like, I should have grown up in like the 50s or something, but I think we just live more of a great, definitely in many ways it's good because we have more opportunities, like women are more empowered, men are more empowered, whatever. But like at the same time, I think there's something to be said about like the authentic connections that we had perhaps back when like maybe our parents were growing up or their parents were growing up. Like,
do you think people have lost the human connection?
I do. I think honestly, like people are more like connecting on social media or virtually rather than in person. And I feel like I think that's something that is definitely something that is contributing to perhaps mental health.
Because there's no, right? Because when we talk about the human connection, we do it face to face.
Yes.
Right. So like this conversation for us it's intriguing, it's stimulating, it's nurturing to the soul.
Yeah.
But like if I message you on like text,
you know
what I'm saying? Like it's
not the same.
I don't have any kind of reward.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I know you better because I was texting you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that the younger generation doesn't have that. I also feel that like we grew up in I would say precisely the right time because we understand what's like before technology and with technology. So we still have the skill set to talk in person.
Yes.
Where people can be a little bit, I would say, awkward, not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I also think too, like even like, I don't know, I think there's something to be said about like family dynamics and like having dinner like as a family. And I think like,
you can tell you're Italian now. Go ahead. You're gonna bring back Sunday dinners?
No, we have dinner every night, like school nights, and then like Sunday at my grandparents. Like so, it was like a sense of like community too. Like I think it's not just the food; it's like community, it's attachment, it's like being not afraid to be vulnerable and like seen for who you are, and like and just
you don't have to be perfect.
Yeah,
which is portrayed on social media.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So for you, could we solve a lot of problems if kids were educated on nutrition in school?
I mean, I think that's so like multifactorial here. I think like we could. I think like honestly, it would be great if we could get kids like actually maybe like growing vegetables in school, like having little gardens, things like that, and like getting more involved in like nature and like in food, or maybe like cooking with their parents or whatever, and understanding why nutrition is important. However, I don't think it's just about nutrition. I think I'm not a mom yet, but I do think, I think perhaps devices with kids perhaps could be maybe put off a little bit later on in life. Like, I think there's so many different things. I don't think it's just nutrition. I do think it's huge though, 100%. Like, I don't think kids should be just, eating these processed meals or McDonald's, etc. Like, or just tied to their smartphones.
Well, I think if parents knew now that, like, if you give them that McDonald's, or you give them that fast food, they're going to be more hyper, more anxious, more argumentative.
Oh, yeah.
Whether if you just made them a chicken breast.
Yeah,
they might be chill.
I think honestly, if anything, it's for the parents, like there's a lot of research too, like for my training for children with autism and ADHD, there are specific diets that they could be following to help with their, their overall functioning. So I will say that too.
And so I know this is a big topic, but I only got a little time left, but like addiction.
Yeah.
Why is it more challenging, or why do people become addicted to things, whereas other people don't? Is it? You're probably gonna say it's multifaceted, like genetics. Yes, it's parenting. Yeah. It's the whole body. But like, Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, of course. I've also worked with folks with addiction, which is often co-occurring with mental health. I would say a big part of it is genetic predisposition. However, I would say even a bigger part is attachment and attunement and adverse childhood experiences. So I will say attunement with our caregivers is huge.
So meaning
the
connection between the parents and the child?
Yes. So if I'm a, small child and I feel safe every time I go to my mom, I get my needs met, I think there's something to be said about that. And I think attachment is huge. Attunement, I would say, and also, genetic predispositions, of course, and nutrition, obviously, gut health. And there's a lot of research coming out now too, even the way, childbirth. I don't want to have a controversial conversation here, but just from the research, even regarding childbirth, C-section compared to more natural birth, in terms of the baby getting more diverse bacteria from their mom. So that helps to set the stage for their microbiome
when they have a vaginal birth versus C-section.
Exactly, yeah.
I heard that children with C-sections have bigger biceps. Is that true? Because I was a C-section, so I don't know.
Well, maybe.
Okay. I don't know if the research supported that, but that's my theory.
And of course, obviously, childbirth is beautiful. It's a miracle, etc. And however, the woman wants to have their child. I know there's there's so many factors that go into that. However, there is research to say that having a baby, the more natural way, they can reap more of the benefits in terms of getting that healthy bacteria, because that sets the stage for their microbiome. So there's a lot of emerging interesting research about that, just to throw that out there.
And that's why I say it sounds like you're on the frontier of where this is going.
Yeah, I've always been interested in this. Yeah. And one of my mentors too is a functional medicine doctor, functional psychiatrist, and I've also been trained by a functional RD. So I've had really great mentors in the field, and I think also life experiences have helped.
So would you say that the one of the main things that people overlook is their gut health?
Definitely.
If things are going on that they don't like, look, and you're not getting the answers that you need, look inwards.
Yes.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So my last question is, if someone is struggling, their life isn't where they want it to be. They know they want to change, right? Because we know where we are. We know where we want to go.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them to start turning their life around? How would they just start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think at first I would say, give some compassion to yourself, because I mean, for myself, I find we are hardest on ourselves. I'm my own worst critic. I am so compassionate to, someone I'm working with or whatever, but first of all, offer yourself some grace. Okay. And then try to dig a little deeper, have some awareness, maybe take a step away from yourself and just try to be self-aware, okay, what's going on for me? What do I think I need for my body to heal? And I know this sounds kind of woo, but we probably intuitively know. It could be okay, maybe I need to get out of this relationship. Maybe I need to get out of this job. Maybe I need to actually sleep 8 hours a night. Maybe I need to get outside more. So maybe it's stuff like that. Or maybe it's maybe I just need to be kinder to myself, or, I think it starts with reflection, self-awareness, but also allowing ourselves to be kind to ourselves. Because if we're just beating up ourselves, come on, that's not going to do anything. That's just going to add more stress, more inflammation, impede the gut health, and impede nutrient absorption.
And I think that's one of the best answers I've heard, because I feel a lot of people, and I made a video on this before, don't beat yourself up.
Yeah.
Everyone else will try to beat you up anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you're successful and you're making your mark in the world. People are going to try to tear you down.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you beat yourself up, you get down. And now we know from this podcast, now you're living in that fight or flight.
Yeah.
Your stress anxiety is up.
Yeah.
It's affecting your gut health, which then affects your mental health.
Yes.
And then your whole body.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you need to rewatch this podcast to hear your answer and just be don't beat yourself up. Wherever you are is okay.
Yeah.
Just take steps each day.
Yeah. Little steps.
become the best version of yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Each step's each day. Even if it's like, okay, I'm going to have a glass of water each hour or
Smell
something.
the apple.
Yeah, engage in my food, or maybe go for a walk during my lunch. Yeah.
Well, Lauren, this was great. Thank you for coming on. I wish you well. How do people get in contact with you?
So my consulting website is almost finished.
Do we know what the URL will be?
I will leave it with you.
Okay, we'll put it into the description.
Yeah, it will be up and running soon. But yeah.
And you're going to be taking clients of all ages?
I'll be taking clients of all ages. Yep. And more info to come on my website.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Hello, my name is Dr. Marc Bochner. Don't forget to check out my new book, Pug Learns to Believe. Hey guys, Dr. Marc here. Now I know a lot of you want to know how we get all these amazing results with our clients, and it comes down to 3 things. The first is fun fitness classes that burn a lot of calories. 2 is giving you an accountability coach to make sure you stay on track and get the best results. And 3 is the nutrition. Included in the nutrition is our food supplements. So we pair with Prestige Labs because I feel they are the best, they have integrity, and they get great results. These are actually the supplements that I take as well. Here's the awesome part. By clicking the link below, you can save 40% off the retail price. So you need that link to actually save 40%. If you just go to the normal site without my link, you're paying full price, okay? So these are the supplements my clients use. If you are interested, definitely click the link below and it'll tell you all about them.